Hello, my name is Hannah Alfieri. This is an interview about Proud Pickles for the Gainesville Business History Oral History Project run by the Inquire Capitalism program of the History Department at the University of Florida. Understand that for us and for the public, the information you are providing is a gift, and it is incredible. It is an incredible historical resource, and we dearly appreciate it. This interview will be available as part of the UF Oral History Collections and through UF Digital Collections and YouTube. So could you please introduce yourself? What's your full name, and could you spell it?
So my name is Elijah Gurman. Most people in town know me as Fish, spelled E-L-I-J-A-H, last name G-U-R-M-A-N. Fun fact about that last name, I learned this from a landlord in New York. It is a derivative of a Russian word for a gourmet. So my last name literally means like dude who likes food.
Nice.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Did not learn that from my family. I learned that from a stranger who I rented from. I thought that was funny.
Mm-hmm. So you've also mentioned to me that your family ran a sort of catering business. So would you say that you always kind of grew up around this?
Yeah. It was like it was something that my parents did like out of their house. But my dad has worked in food service as long as I've known him. Mm-hmm. Mostly in managerial positions for restaurants like Applebee's or places like that. But I've been involved with food since pretty young. I'd say like probably around like 8 or so. I probably started kind of getting my hands dirty with some of the stuff that they were doing. That was kind of how it started.
Mm-hmm. And are you from Gainesville?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am North Central trash, the best kind of trash. Mm-hmm. I'm obviously joking, but it's a good way to see like who your people are. Some people are more tight knit, and some people a little more loose. And I tend to be a little more of the wackadoodle type. So it's a good just like filter. If someone doesn't laugh at that joke, then nothing wrong with that, but they're probably not my type of person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was born and raised here in Gainesville. East Side was my high school. So they had a culinary program, and I was lucky enough to attend that for all 4 years.
Nice. And did you stay in Gainesville for your entire working career?
No. So Gainesville until I was around 17, I think. Yeah, 17 when I graduated. I was working at the Red Onion. That was my first real cook job. It's closed now, unfortunately, which is sad. It was a good restaurant. But I was there for the first 3 years that they were open. It's actually been cool. I work over at Crafty Bastards, and some of my coworkers will tell me like, oh yeah, you definitely cooked for like some of these people, like way back in the day, which was kind of cool. But from Gainesville, I went to Miami for college and more cooking, and then from Miami to New York, and then eventually back here.
Mm-hmm. And so how does Gainesville compare to New York and Miami in terms of the food scene?
It's a lot more low-key. Big cities tend to have like really extreme restaurant scenes. And thank God it's not. It's kind of nice. Places like Miami and like specifically places like New York, they are not places to go and settle down. They're not a place to go and plant your roots and be there for a long time, just because if you're there, you're working a lot. Like even the people who don't want to work, they're working a lot. Just because the nature of the competition, everything's really expensive. So in that regard, it's very different. Like, I've had coworkers ask me like, why am I like walking so fast? Maybe that's just like the New York, aspect that I got used to. But I can run at like 70% now, and people think I'm still doing 120, which is cool because you can like breathe a little bit but still execute really well. It is cool to see the food scene has gotten a little cooler. There's more local spots, sushi, ramen. Like they actually have some cool food here now. Whereas when I was growing up, it was a lot of like Hungry Howie's and things like that. So chain restaurants, nothing wrong with them. They suit their purpose, but they're lacked the culture that was like special and unique to this town. But then again, I was like really young, so maybe I didn't get a chance to explore what was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of along those lines, could you explain your nickname a little more?
Oh yeah, Fish. It's because I'm a catch. Nah. When I was talking with my brother about moving back to Gainesville, he asked me if I was going to miss New York, and I said, yeah, sure, probably parts, because obviously there were parts about New York that I really loved, like the variety of food and restaurants, and it was always open. Something was always open, which was really cool, especially if you're a night owl. But hopefully not. Why would I leave New York if it was going to be the same? And at that point, I said I feel like I'm going to feel like a big fish in a small pond, referring to that work differential, right? Like if every day is like the Super Bowl for you and then you go somewhere where it's not, it's just like, you can't have a bad day, right? Like Gainesville has never given me a bad day compared to some of the bad days that I had in New York, which were really rough at the time. So I said, big fish, small pond, and my brother did not ask me to clarify. And like, well, whoa, big britches, what do you mean by that? He heard that, and he went, this arrogant piece of trash. And so for like the next 6 months, he would only refer to me as big fish. So, oh, you mean Eli, Mr. Big Fish? And it stuck after a while, and about a year later, it was funny, after I'd moved back, he said the exact same sentence to me with basically the same context. Because he was blowing off steam after work, and same deal, being overqualified, surrounded by people that were not of the same caliber. Not to toot like my horn or his, but like that's the thing about small towns. It's more relaxed, thank God, but generally you don't have as many people that really want to be at the top of their game, right? Especially like food. If you work in food, chances are you probably don't want to go to a small town, right? You're not going to find the clientele there. Gainesville is more of a big town in that regard, but it's, Gainesville's here, Miami, New York, they're just higher calibers of expectations and quality. Not to shit on Gainesville. Gainesville does a great job, but it's just, even though some people don't compare fruit, like apples and oranges, they are very different animals for sure.
Did you move back to Gainesville specifically for the culinary aspects?
No, I was working as a bartender at a spot called the Nomad, which was a really, really cool establishment to work at. And when my brother called me, he was working at Shan's at the time, and he wasn't, he was having those feelings of, not being happy with where he was at in his life, and so he looked up some information on like starting your own business. And so the conversation originally was, hey, do you want to start a restaurant? Which eventually became Laser Tag, don't ask me how, which eventually became a bounce house company. So that's one of the other businesses I have on the side. My brothers and I service Gainesville and the surrounding areas, and we do bounce houses on the weekend. So no, originally I moved back to Gainesville not to be involved with food. Not because I was trying to get out of it or anything. I really do like what I do. But I also like trying new things, getting out of my comfort zone. I've ended up in Bristol Bay, Alaska, fishing for sockeye salmon for a summer. That was cool. I've also cold knocked selling pest control in California for 2 summers in a row. So I've had like weird, like really hard perpendicular pivots in my career. But I just keep coming back to food, and like the last name, I don't get a choice in this, it seems like, but I like it, so it works out.
And so kind of moving a little bit closer to the business, how did you start it and why did you? My story's so convoluted. So basically we were doing the laser tag business. That was our focus, and in an effort to try and stir up business, we were doing a public fair at One Love Cafe in February and March of 2020, and then, which was really great. It was one of the few times where we seemed to get some traction. Like, oh man, like we actually might have people getting to know us and getting to know the business, and they might want to rent from us, and this will be really cool. And then as we were getting so excited, that's when the COVID lockdowns happened and everything kind of stopped. So at that right around the same time, we purchased that bounce house company, which was a really good move, because you could still keep a lot of the social distancing aspects that were really important at the time. We could drop off units without even having to see the people. So that worked out great in that regard, but because everything was shut down, we still couldn't really do a lot of rentals as we were waiting for insurance paperwork. So Proud Pickles started up as a desperation move. I drove my brother crazy, making pickles at home and stuffing them into the fridge. And he's a very patient man. And just over time, I would message people through Gainesville word of mouth groups. I knew it was like a numbers game, so I would just hit up as many people as I could. Just, hey, I'm the pickle guy, if you like pickles, and most people didn't hit me back up, but enough did, and I would go and do deliveries once a week. And then just over time, eventually I got into the Grove Street market, where I was originally bringing everything in a
broken in a busted up Toyota Corolla where one of the doors didn't open and one of the windows didn't open. So I had a very specific way of jam packing everything into that little thing. And eventually I moved into a truck, and eventually I got a food trailer. The food trailer is way better. Still a lot of work to be done on it, but it saved me a lot of time, and I'm not getting rained on, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like I wasn't expecting to do the pickle thing. It was just kind of something that happened, and a lot of people have that story, it seems like, where the lockdowns happened and they were trying to figure out what to do. And so a lot of them just threw a noodle at the wall and it stuck. So most people probably wouldn't be a fan of doing another lockdown for whatever reason. You know, it's like, I'd rather keep my business running, you know, even if you have a good reason, people don't want to do that. But if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have my business. So it's interesting how the framing and perspective that comes with like a terrible experience of like I have to shut my business down, we don't know what's going to happen, that comes along with this business that people seem to like and I enjoy, and I make a little bit of money on it, and so like that's really cool. So it makes me think that opportunity is always around you, and if you think it's not there, it's because you can't see it, which is really easy to say when you're like the one has opportunity. Like you always feel like it's not there when you're on the other side of it. But sometimes it really is just like one conversation or just one pickle that you just tried out that seems to work out.
Mm-hmm. And do you think all of your experiences in New York and Miami and all across the country helped you with this sort of ambition to create the business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything in your past is building up for your future. You just, once again, it's like you can't see it at the time. So like the Nomad's a good example. Like all the restaurant experience makes sense as far as like knife work. There's a lot of knife work. There's so much knife work. I'm doing a pickle class in 2 weeks at the Fat Tuscan, and I've had a couple of people say like, "Aren't you worried like of giving away your recipes?" I'm like, no one's that stupid. Like you might learn the recipe and like, yeah, sure, you can go home and you'll make a pickle and you'll be like, this is fun. I gotta do shit though. You're not gonna make all these things, so like I'm not worried about like losing my job or anything like that. Plenty of people can make a burger, but McDonald's and Relish and all these other places are still working. But even like the Nomad, which I would not have thought would have been like if you would have told me, hey, you're gonna be making pickles in a couple of years, you should go work at this bar because you're gonna learn a skill set there that's gonna help with that. I wouldn't have thought so. But the Nomad was cool because they were really very systematic about their approach, about taking really complicated tasks and breaking them down into smaller ones. Something as simple as like a cheater bottle with 3 liquors at a certain ratio. So instead of having 3 bottles that you would pick up and then pour separately, you would have 1 bottle that you would pick up and pour, right? So it's like prep beforehand to make it easier to execute when it's time to actually go. So like something as simple as that, and a lot of other things that the Nomad taught helped get me ready for this, because I've had to be really efficient with my time there because I have a lot of other things going on between working at Crafties and the bounce houses and some networking that I do. So like every time I go, being in the kitchen is not fun for some people just because I'm not a dick. It's very intense. It's like I've got 2.5 hours, and as soon as 2.5 hours is over, I have to go. Like I do not have time because I don't want people to wait on me. I don't want to be late anymore. I want to be someone who like is reliable in that regard, which means I have to hold myself to a high standard, which means like I'm not fucking around. Although I like to fuck around, it's just when I'm in the kitchen, it's time to. So it's gonna be a little intense, but yeah, I think everything kind of helped build up to that. Mm-hmm. And I can see where like specific recipes or ingredients remind me of like stuff I've done in the past.
Yeah. And speaking of recipes, do you think you could walk us through from coming up with the recipe up through actually selling it at the markets?
Yeah. So like the original like set of recipes that I had, which was like something like 10 to 20, something in that ballpark. I literally just looked up recipes online. Like I know how to make pickles, but I just wanted like a baseline recipe to run off of. And so I just took them. I made a couple of small batches. That one's a little too sweet. That one's a little too this or that. And I just did a couple of trial runs after I think after 2, maybe 3. I was pretty set on what the original classic dill recipe would be. And then from there, some of them are based off of recipes that everyone knows. So the ratatouille is a good example. It's basically vegetables in red sauce. So you think of Italian food. Well, this is the Italian pickle. Or the teriyaki green papaya, soy sauce, ginger, scallions, Asian vibe. So some of them, they're really, if you could easily find other recipes online that would mimic those very easily. On the other hand, some of them, the electric grapes I have no explanation for why that one makes sense. It just did in my head. I think some of it's the color schemes, red grapes. There's gochujang, which is a mild chili paste. I was okay, that could kind of go together, something kind of sweet, slightly spicy. And it does, but it tastes like Pinot Noir. It tastes like wine or kombucha. And I've had 4 people spit that one out. One person said it was effing disgusting. But I've had plenty of other people say it's one of the best pickles they've ever had. So my ego has been bruised many times doing this, and it's been calloused over. And so now, if someone doesn't like my stuff, I don't care, because if you don't, that's probably a good thing. It just means that you're not the person for that pickle. But there's going to be, for that individual, there's also just as many who really, 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 really like it. And if you're doing something that's really unique, there's going to be people who don't like it. Generic things, everyone likes. Unique things that people really, really like, someone else is going to be turned off by it. Not everyone loves heavy metal, but Gainesville is full of metalheads. So I feel like some of them are just noodles being thrown at the wall. I feel like some of them are based off of other recipes, and some of them are just straight mistakes. The Thai watermelon peanut spread, pickled watermelon rind, ginger, and toasted peanuts. You blend it until it's kind of like a rough peanut butter. It's not it doesn't have the same kind of creaminess as the peanut butter, so it's very chunky. That one was a complete fuck up. I was boiling boiled peanuts and watermelon rind side by side, and I used a spoon to stir the 2 pots without thinking about it. And as soon as the spoon hit the liquid, I went, nah. Peanut allergy, but I didn't want to throw it out, so I just doubled down on the peanuts and hoped it would sell, and it does. It sells really, really well. So, yeah, there's no such thing as trash. You can make something you can make out of it, and someone's gonna buy it. It's just a matter of whether a lot of people are gonna buy it. There's a weirdo for everything.
Which do you have a favorite recipe?
The boiled peanuts are my favorite. Yeah, which technically they're more like a half pickle. As far as the acid content, they don't have the same shelf life as the other ones do. After about a month, they start to ferment, which is fine if you like fermented foods. But the boiled peanuts are one of my favorite ones. The cauliflower leaf mushroom kimchi is one of my favorites. The jardiniere is probably my most versatile, but it's like picking your favorite sunset. They're all really nice. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what you're in the mood for. Because you could name a dish for me, and I would have a pickle that would go with it. So I like to think I have something for everyone in that regard.
Would you be able to go a little bit in depth on how you got into selling at markets and how you specifically found the local Gainesville ones to get into?
Yeah, so it was actually really convenient timing, as I had 2 or 3 weeks of a lot of pickle sales where there was two weeks, I think it was, where on a Friday I delivered 100 jars on each of those Fridays, which was a lot. It was really funny. So the original name for the business was the Pickle Plug. That was the original name for it. Because I was at the Home Depot off of Tower, and I'm texting the guy, all right, I'm in the parking lot. He goes, I'm in the black sedan. I'm like, which black sedan? And so I see an arm waving. So I pull up to him. I don't even get out of the car. I just hand him the pickles. He hands me the cash, and I drive off. And as I'm driving off, I was picturing what a cop would see. And then getting pulled over and trying to explain to him, no, I promise, it's just pickles. You can open it up. Go ahead. You're not gonna find anything in there. But after those 2 weeks, for whatever reason, the next couple weeks kind of dwindled down. And I can't remember whether someone told me about the Grove Street Market or if I just looked up local farmers markets or something like that. But they'd only been running for like 6 or 8 months. I think they first started that market back in March of 2020, something like that. And so, yeah, they had more than enough space. Monica let me in. And yeah, that market became like my main outlet for the pickles for the better part of like 3-4 years. But now I'm into three or four markets now on the regular.
Okay, which markets?
Cypress and Grove on Mondays, San Velasco Tech City on Wednesdays, Saturdays at the 441 market by the Highway Patrol Station, the Alachua County market. And then from there I have some specialty ones. There's like a vegan market at Critter Creek. They do that once every month on a Sunday. They'll shut down during the summer, but they do that fall, winter, and spring. The summer, no. They got rained on once. 2 days later, they thought it was still okay, but the water had still soaked into the ground so much that the mud was really bad. So every car that stopped immediately dropped 6 inches into the ground. Oh. They called it the mud kit instead of the moo kit. It was bad. Like halfway through, they just stopped letting people in, and God bless them, the whole crew was there strapping things to the vehicles, using other vehicles to try and pull them out of the mud. It was bad. So like when they tell me no, I'm like, I don't have to fight you on this one, you guys. Yeah. Especially, oh God, especially if I had my trailer. Nah. I don't need it that bad. It'll be a bad day. But thanks to the trailer, I can do those markets now, because my markets before, a 3-hour market took about 11 hours of my day to do. Now it's down to like 7 to 8. I'm having some issues with one of the coolers in there, so I'm getting it replaced. I'm packing with ice packs for the time being, but that requires me to do more like loading and unloading to make sure that things are safe. But still, I'm at least saving like 3 or 4 hours on every market. So over the course of a month, I've got like an entire week back in my pocket, which is awesome.
And at these markets, you're kind of known for your marketing techniques. Do you want to go into that?
Yeah. My staff member Chase, we were talking about it one day. He said, we couldn't, like a market full of us would be bad, because we kind of like it's like modern day. It's like 2025 catcalling, kind of like you're just, hey, you want to try a pickle? I've said that sentence so many times now. Hey, you want to try a pickle? And they all say no, and so you're sitting there after like because vendors they're producers. They're not, most of them aren't like salespeople, right? They're there to like make stuff, but most of them don't do the sales aspect. And so I guess, so there you go. There's another one, like having that sales experience in the past, and then working behind the bar and like talking with people, which years ago, if you would have told me I would have bartended, I wouldn't have believed you, because I'm an introvert by nature. I'm more of like an ambivert now. I guess I've kind of opened up and embraced both sides. But I didn't have the ability to like really talk to people. So when I was first doing those sales years ago, like that sucked. That was bad. Like it wasn't a dialogue. I would just like blow through whatever the scripted lines were. And I did like okay, but now that like, especially after years of doing the pickle thing, like I'm confident, like you might not like it, but like there's a good chance you might. So when people say they don't like it, I'm like, you're full of shit. Like you probably like something. And especially because like people have come up and thanked me. They've thanked me for bothering them. They've used that term, like, hey, thanks for bugging me. Okay. Thanks for letting me try this. I would have never thought I would have liked this thing, because people hear pickles, they think cucumbers, they don't think of all these other cool things. Because according to the FDA, pickles are only cucumbers. It's a regulatory thing. So like there's pickles and then pickled items. Whatever. But if you were to go to other countries, Russia, Poland, whatever, you'd say, can I get a pickle? Most of them would respond with, what kind of pickle do you want? So I call it aggressive generosity, because I don't want people to feel like we're forcing them, although we like, kind of are, like somewhat. Like I don't care if they buy, like they don't owe me anything, but I want them to just try one if possible. If they really don't want to, I'm not going to put a gun to their head. Like you don't have to, right? But like you're at a farmer's market, and like it might make your day better, and so you just learn to come up with to overcome objections. Hey, you want to try a pickle? No. Coward. Coward works, although Chase has gotten Flip the Bird doing that. You just come up with like things, and so it's like playful teasing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of thing that like I do with my family, because I love my family, but we don't say I love you. We say like, hey, it's my brother, he's trash. That's what we do. And so it's kind of like that, and it's a fine line because you can offend people if you're not careful. Like we have a pickle called the Swifty Carrots. Don't worry about the name, like how we got the name, but they're called the Swifty Carrots. And so it's a great opener. It's like, hey, do you like Taylor Swift? And it's very polarizing. People make a face, and you could tell immediately, like you could tell if like they're like, yeah, I'm a fan, or you could tell if they're like, yeah, I'm a fan, but I'm not proud of it, or like they really hate her, you know? And so depending on what they say, hey, do you like Taylor Swift? Yeah, I love Taylor Swift. Great, this is wonderful and original, just like her music. Or, hey, do you like Taylor Swift? I'm not the biggest fan. That's okay. This is much better than her music, you know? And I often do both of those back to back, so people know like, I'm just making jokes, right? I'm just playing both sides of the fence, and sometimes it almost feels like Chase and I are doing like little stand-up routines, because he's extremely funny. He's one of the funniest people I know, and I'm okay with the funny, so we banter really, really well. And so yeah, you know, I'll literally chase people down, you know, because they'll just say some crap that they don't mean, like, hey, like I gotta head to dinner. I'm like, great. And I run up to them, I give them the pickle, I'm like, don't come back. Or they're like, I bought pickles last week. I'm like, great. You're not allowed to. Matter of fact, you're drunk. Give me your keys. You're not allowed anymore, right? And so like, and then sometimes they'll say like, all right, I'll buy it. I'm like, no, you're not gonna make me break my promise. And they're like, I'll buy it. I'm like, okay, I'll do it, you know. And it's just being playful, and you realize that when people say no, a lot of the times it's just a natural reaction. They don't really say no, and especially when you're doing it with other salespeople, it's really fun doing it because they know the deal, right? They know all of it, but they can appreciate like the salesmanship. Never would have thought sales would have been something that I do. Certainly not the way that I do it. And it's funny how like only you really know your own story, and so it's funny seeing like the progression from who you used to be to who you are now, and how most people only know this version. They don't know all the other stuff, like, you know, on the back end. Aggressive generosity.
Nice. And with how young the business is, when did and how did Chase become a part of this? Because it is just you two doing this, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. So Chase worked for another vendor. I think it was Eddie's Patties, and he was like super young. I think he was like 14 or 15 when he started doing it. And I'd met him and like said a couple words, but he was really, really shy. He's also on the spectrum, autistic wise, and he's young. He grew up on the internet, didn't have a lot of like socializing with people, but for whatever reason, he came up to me one day and asked me if I needed help, and I try to, like, especially if a kid comes up and asks for work, you should give them work. You shouldn't put them in the coal mines, but like you want to encourage that. Like, oh, you want to be productive. That's a wonderful thing. Let me involve you with it. So he was originally just doing the pickle sales with me at the market, and then over time, to get him more hours, we have him do some prep with me as well. And watching him grow has been really cool because he sucked really bad. like he, for the sales, he's phenomenal. Like, I've got nothing but good things to say about that. In the kitchen, once again, like, he was an internet kid, didn't do a lot of work with his hands. That required a lot of training. But like, he's gotten to a point now, I was surprised. I had him like julienne, like matchstick cut ginger the other day. And when I like came back around to check on it, they looked really good. I was surprised because he hasn't worked on that in a long time. So it's been cool seeing him, grow and get better. And he's definitely been a part of, specifically with like the sales, like the food aspect, that's really mostly me. But as far as like the sales go, I think he's been a good person to kind of learn from as well. And like, it's funny saying learn from because he's super young. But like why not? That's a great answer. Hey, you want to try a pickle? No. Why not? Yeah, that's right. You don't have an answer. Just come. And so the sales are a big part of what we're focusing on this year as far as like what to improve on, because closed questions are really hard to work with. Hey, you want to try a pickle? No. okay, where do I go from there? So we've started trying other things like, hey, do you want to, can I borrow you for a taste test? Do you want to try a sample? Or just a lot of these, like just a lot of this. And sometimes it comes off as kind of beggy, like, like just try one, just try one. And it sounds like I'm like this, which, if that's how you interpret it, that's fine. It's really not. Like, I can't say this enough, I don't care if they buy. Because even if they don't buy, they become part of the group that knows me, right? Hey, like, oh, you like pickles? There's this guy, he's ridiculous. He yells at me every single week. He's always got weird stuff. I honestly, like, half the crap I don't even like. But he has this one, like, grape. It's like electric. That's good. You should try that out. That happens everywhere. And so there's this idea of like giving before receiving. That's the whole idea. It's like I don't want you to feel bad. I don't feel obligated to buy stuff. I'll joke about it. Like by the time people have like their third sample, they usually feel guilty and buy something. Because yes, I am there to make sales, but I'm not tied to the result of that day, because I know if I do good work, over time I'll make what I need to make. But if you have that idea of like, I need this sale, I need this one to happen, and it doesn't, that's like a little chink in your armor. You start to feel negative about yourself, and whether you mean to or not, that goes into your next interaction. And you want to treat every single person like they are your whale. And if they're not, that's okay, because I'm one step closer now to that whale. Because some people come and I've had people drop $100 on pickles, which is, when I as I'm ringing it up, this guy the other day, he bought $82 worth of pickles. It was 5 jars. And like, I'm doing the math, I'm like, it's $82. And he's like, is that right? And in my head, I'm like, oh no, does he think it's too much? He's like, I thought it'd be more expensive than that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That is way too cheap. I should charge more. But yeah, like that's cool to hear, because you don't get to choose what your value is. You can have an idea of what your value is, but your value is also what's given back to you, right? If I think I'm worth $1,000 and people are only willing to pay $200, I can say $1,000 all day, but the market has a different opinion, And so I don't try to use external validation, for what's inside, but I do think that it has a purpose there to like remind you, like, if everyone tells you your product is good and they're happy with it, like don't be jaded. Like they actually might, not actually might, they certainly do mean it. They could also say, yeah, it's okay, it's better than nothing. You're local, I guess I'll take it. And so thanks to all of that internalizing of that external validation, which once again, like that's not the purpose of it. It's not there because you need it. It's like, oh, okay, the universe is responding to me and telling me that yes, indeed, I'm worth it. Like if you have a bunch of, like we all think we suck, but then your friends are like, no, I think you're good. And it's like you're ignoring all of those people that are being honest with you, and they actually think you're good. They just think, maybe you could do a little bit better here or there. You're not perfect. But you're like, no, I'm terrible. No. And that's all, the insecurity and the depression and the anxiety and all of that, which everyone fights with.
Yeah. No, and your business has definitely grown. Where do you see it going within the future?
So it could go a lot of different ways. Right now, I'm kind of hitting roadblocks as far as like how much time and how much space I have. For me to do more at this point, I'm going to have to start doing less of something else, which I'm just physically, it's not going to happen for at least another 6 to 8 months, because like we're going into the busy season with the bounce houses. I still work at Crafties, and that's where that's where my kitchen is. And they have a whole restaurant that they have to operate there, so I just can't take over. So I'm limited in that aspect, but when I've been trying to think of like long-term what the business could be, I think Proud Pickles will eventually become like an alternative snack food company. So like pickles are the main thing that I do, but there's no reason why. And I've played around with some of these things. You could do teas. There's whole fruit candies, so I can make candy out of watermelon using the flesh, the rind, and the skin, like the full watermelon. Delicious candy. Still a lot of sugar because obviously it's sweet, but there's plant fiber and nutrition compared to Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, which is really just trash. And I like Reese's, but like health-wise, they're not there. I feel like I've got the people who like pickles or are willing to try pickles, like that corner of the market taken care of. But there's like a lot of other things that I can do, and I'm hoping that as I expand into more of those things, it's not just more items that I can provide to people, but I become a larger, like a larger net for farmers to use to move their product, right? Because like if you only know one way to use a cucumber, you'll get bored of cucumber. But if it's like, oh, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, all of a sudden every recipe is like another excuse for people to use it. And especially since so many farmers, like they make stuff, but then they don't have an outlet for it. So I'm really hoping that like long term, it'd be cool if I could somehow get like a produce vendor section paired up with what I do, where, you know, hey, you're buying the stuff. Do you want some lettuce while you're here? Would you like some potatoes? Or something like that. It's just me playing around with ideas. I hope one day to hire a gardener, have a farm of some sort, just for that vertical integration aspect of it. I think that we could do very similar like what the Fat Tuscan does. Like we can do classes, whether it's pickling or fermenting or just cooking in general. Like if I have the space and it's interesting enough, people will come and check it out. So there's a lot of different ways I can go. I think that just doing production in pickles, although that will always be like a large part of it, I can see how I can do other things that don't require me to be chained to a stove for 18 hours, which I like what I do, but as far as like leveraging into better pay, like the pickle class I'll be doing, that'll be a cool thing that doesn't require me to make stuff. Or the swamp, I'm doing a pickle and beer pairing at Swamp Head in about 2.5 weeks. I just went and did the tasting there today, so it'll be the hibiscus cucumber, the cowboy carrots, the mean pineapple, and what was the last one? Wait for it. I wrote it down. Trash. Seriously, what was the last one? I did write it down, right? Ratatouille, the ratatouille, right. So that'll be like a special event, but the last time we did it, I think I sold like 88 flights. So yeah, that was good, that was cool. It was a lot of work to get it like ready, but it was a cool one. So yeah, like the pickles are like the foot in the door. And then once I can get a little more settled into a space of my own, that's when I can start playing around with all the other stuff that we can do. But really, I think the core focus will be being a vehicle for local produce. Mm-hmm. You have to make it simple and easy for people to make a better choice. You can wag your finger at them all day and say, you shouldn't be buying from Walmart, and you should go to farmers markets. It's like, yeah, but I've got 3 kids, and one of them has soccer practice, and one of them gets seizures, and I spend half of my weeks in the hospital. It's like, when could I go and make that shop and spend an hour and a half going, and maybe they don't have toilet paper there or aluminum foil or whatever else it is that I need. And so I've become a lot more, I mean, I've always been empathetic to it, but like I have a much better understanding of like those challenges. It's not just as simple as like Walmart's trash. And it's like, well, it serves a function. Can you replace the function with something better, right? People killed whales for the longest time for their oil because they needed blubber for lighting their lanterns or whatnot. The whales were going to die off, but fossil fuels were discovered. Fossil fuels have their own challenges, but people stopped killing whales. They didn't stop killing whales because they loved the whales. They stopped killing whales because they found a better alternative, right? And so I kind of think about all of these things in that aspect. It's like, well, if you want people to eat better food, like give them better food to eat, you know? And that can be hard, especially if you grew up on the standard American diet of like highly processed foods. Like my girlfriend has an 8-year-old, and she tells me like he used to eat okra raw, which is, yeah, that's that face. She eats it too raw, but she's an adult. Like I can see that, but like a 4-year-old eating okra raw, like I don't see that happening. But you know, now he's 8 and his diet's a little bit more of the chicken tenders and whatnot, and it's not because she doesn't take the time to try and feed him well. It's like if he doesn't want to eat it, like especially if he's at school, he just won't eat it. It's like so my choice is to get either like feed you a chicken tender or get Child Protective Services called on me because you're malnourished because you just won't eat the shit, you know. Yeah, it's like the challenges are much more complicated and nuanced than just the tagline, right? Of you should just do this or that. That's where I'm hoping the pickles go.
Nice.
Yeah.
And along with the vertical integration, would you be able to expand on the environmental impact and zero food waste of the company?
Yeah, so there was a restaurant, it's like you asked before, like all the pieces that kind of connect up. So there was a restaurant called Acme in New York that I worked at for about two and a half years. The chef there was Mads Refsland. He helped open Noma, which is a super famous fine dining restaurant in Copenhagen, I think it is, Scandinavia, something like that. I might have some of those details wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was it. He was really big on like the weird stuff. He was really big into preservation, so pickling, fermenting, drying things, and he's always like serving like the weird shit that people didn't want. He'd like the chef de cuisine, the guy that was underneath him at the restaurant, he's like, Mads is like he's like a kid prodigy, like a painter, but he's like painting on the wall, and you just like pivot him 90 degrees onto the canvas, right? He's kind of got like all these crazy ideas. You just got to like, Mads, just a little less weird on that. But he had a big focus on those parts, all the stuff that people didn't want. So like, for example, like fish jowls. We did a really good one. Snapper, I think it was Snapper was the one. We did a couple of different fish jowls, but he would take kombu and prunes and simmer them for like an hour, strain it, and then reduce that down to a glaze, and that glaze would go on top of the fish jowl. And like there were bones in it, so there was like some aspect of trying to like, you'd kind of have to like not use your hands. They would give them tongs and things. You'd kind of have to like rip out the meat, and then you'd put that into like lettuce cups and whatnot. But it was delicious. But it was this like offcut. The cauliflower like stalks, not the florets. We had a dish where you would shave off all the florets, which is the part that people want, and set that to the side. And then the core of it, you would chop into large chunks, and you would just saute that with a little bit of oil, a little bit of lemon juice, and salt, and then at the last second you'd toss in chunks of brie cheese that would kind of slightly melt onto it. So it was this like warm crudité sort of thing. But like half the time we didn't have any plans with the fucking florets. So all that would become family meal, which is fine. But it was a lot of cauliflower. I was like, I'm like bins like this big, like 2 or 3 of them every couple of days. And so like it was interesting because he had the right idea of like using everything, but you ended up with the same issue. He had like he had this vision of like I want to take this part and do this with it, and all that other shit. You guys figure that out. He's like, I'm painting on the wall over here, and so I've heard. I think it was I heard Kanye West talking about this once about the way he thought about designing clothing. And he was talking about how like, you know, when he's thinking of the jeans, he's thinking of like where he's going to source it from, thinking very holistically about the whole process, right? So like when I buy, for example, when I buy like cauliflower, the leaves, most people don't do stuff with it. There is no such thing as food waste. They turns out make great ferments. So one of my favorite products, the cauliflower leaf mushroom kimchi. I don't have a cool name for it, so it's just descriptive. That is mostly trash, mostly stuff that we would just throw away, and it's phenomenal. People don't buy that because they want to feel good about zero waste. They buy it because it's delicious, right? Pineapple skins are another example, right? They make great teas, right? Watermelon skin, you can actually dehydrate that, like the green part, you can dehydrate it, blend it, and that actually you can add to yogurts or smoothies, and they have tons of nutrients, the skins. So like I've come to realize like there really is no such thing as food waste. It's really a matter of, you know, are you willing to put the time and effort into whatever you need to do to extract it, and 2, like, can you make it delicious? Because like it might take a little bit of work to make it delicious. There was a point I was going to make. I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, so like when I'm purchasing things now, like as I'm trying to find ways to use the entire thing. One, because like zero food waste is a trendy word, but like, yeah, we would prefer not to throw stuff away if possible. And I think, especially nowadays, people are becoming really aware of these old school wasteful practices of like, I want just the best thing. It's a very consumerism idea. I want the best orange. And so all the people selling the oranges are like, all right, so we'll just toss all these ones that we don't want. And they literally have businesses now that like save them. They'll, like there are literally grocery companies that will buy ugly produce and sell that produce because even though the carrot looks like it's got two legs, it's still a carrot. Who cares? Like, you know, it's like I think it's a changing of values where people are moving away from some of the more superficial things. Like I want a tomato that's really beautiful and it's very round. And it's like, we gotcha. It's gonna taste like shit, and it's gonna stay like, it's not gonna go bad for a long time, but the nutritional content's gonna go down. So you can think of like, you know, like on like video games, they'll have like points for characters. You know, you can add to strength or whatever, but as you add to one, you can't add to others, and so you might end up beefed out on strength, but your agility is really slow. So you can swing a hammer really hard, but you're dead slow at it. Food, a lot of things are like that. Food as well. It's like we found a way to, you know, grow more vegetables closer together, but the quality is less good. So you get more, but they're all empty. So you're giving up the time it would take to grow it appropriately to get more yield out. And so it's almost like no matter what you're doing, you have to pay the cost, right? And you can cheat the system. It's like we got more of it out in less time, but it's less quality. So are you really getting more? No, you're just getting more of one aspect of it, but you're not getting the parts, all of the parts that you need. Sorry, I don't know how I got on that part. Oh, right, like food waste and stuff like that. Yeah. So I think more chefs are starting to think that way about holistically the whole process. Because frankly, like, fine dining chefs can talk all day about how much they want to respect the product and all these things, but like if you're still dumping out bins and bins and bins and bins of food that doesn't have to be thrown out because you want to sell the perfect XYZ to your customer, which fair enough, like if you're paying $1,000 for a meal, you should probably get like the best part. But at the same time, like if I were a farmer, even if you paid me, I would be kind of upset. It's like, hey, what'd you do with all that? Like, remember those 60 pounds of tomatoes you bought from me? What'd you do with them? He's like, oh, I took a picture and then dumped them down the train. Like, why'd you do that? Why didn't you eat them? He's like, they didn't, that one on the front was really pretty. The rest of them looked like shit. Like I don't know. I don't think I would be happy. Like, I'm not a farmer, so I can't really speak for them. Like, if they got paid, they would still be fine with it, I'm sure, to some degree. Yeah.
Nice. And how do you integrate these values kind of right now in your business, and how do you want to approach them in the future?
I think I'm always tinkering with recipes. Even as I'm trying to like trim the menu down, I'm still like playing around with ideas. Because as soon as you find as soon as you make a product that becomes an outlet for that thing, then like I've got almost zero food cost. So like pineapple skins can still be kind of iffy. I have some product. It's just a matter of like my menu's so big it can get overwhelming for people. So I can make 1,000 things. It doesn't mean I'm selling 1,000 things. I think really it's just staying at the core of like realizing like there's a place for all of these things. You just have to like systemize your approach so that, you know, if you have like carrot peels and daikon peels, that's a good example. You can dehydrate them so they don't spoil, but if you don't do anything with them, you just end up with this big bin of like peels. So you have to do something with them as well. But the key is like it has to not go bad. It has to be delicious above all else. If it's nutritious, that's a bonus. But if it's not good, people aren't going to buy it. They just won't. Like you can tell them all day, like, this is really good for you. They're like, great. Do you have a Coke? And I'm not trying to shit on all these things. Like I like Coke too. Like I think all these things have a place, right? Like Vlasics and Twinkies don't go bad ever, which is really, really cool. They never go bad. If you went 100 years ago and said, hey, yo, this thing never goes bad, they would go, what is this magic? And we nowadays are like, this is garbage. Because in a lot of ways it is. It's not good for you. Twinkies aren't good for you. But if you don't have other options and the refrigerator's broken down and you don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of days or weeks, like the stuff that doesn't go bad's good. So like my products, I think, are better in many ways. Like I think the nutritional content's better. I think the texture's better. I think the flavors are more interesting and novel and they taste fresher, but they need to stay refrigerated. Whereas the Vlasics don't. I don't know about some of the colors that they use in there, right? Turns out it seems like a lot of food products we have nowadays in some way, shape, or form cause cancer. So like that's cool, right? Just get a little poison in whatever it is that you're eating. But they never go bad. And so which one's better? It depends on how you're measuring it. They both have value. It's just a matter of what your situation is and what your needs are.
Yeah, and those are all the questions that I have on my end. Do you have anything else that you would like to say?
That's a good question. I really hope that this is really cool. I'm very, 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 very fortunate and grateful to be able to do this at this point in my life. I feel like I'm oddly prepared for it. Like if you would have written like the name, like the story of the pickle guy, like, yeah, okay, a lot of this checks out. That makes sense. And I'm hoping that, the business grows. I hope I can become an outlet for farmers in the community. I would like, although I'm hesitant to do it, to expand. It'd be cool if I could have like a Proud Pickles Chicago, Proud Pickles New York, because I don't think I want to run a huge company. I could maybe be part of that. But I know I know as you scale up, the issues get bigger, and like I'm not a COO by any means. Maybe I could do it, but I don't think. I don't know. But I do think that having my style of business in other cities could be that vehicle for local produce, because you need to have a connecting point from the consumer and the producer. That's what Publix is, that's what Walmart is, that's what all these other businesses are. They're that middle point where you can save time and not have to go here for your cheese, and here for your goat's milk, and here for your tomatoes, and here for the celery, because I like the celery here. They do tomatoes, but the tomatoes over here are better. So I'm hoping that like the pickles could be an answer for that. But I don't know if that would be a licensing thing or a franchise or what. But luckily, I don't have to figure that out right now. Right now, I just got to make sure that like I got what I have here going on well. So, hope to expand a little more. I hope to get a few more staff members. I hope to maybe get another trailer sometime soon. The one I have works fine, but it could use an upgrade. I would like an upgrade. I'd like a little more space, things like that. But yeah, no, I think that's about it that I can think of.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.